free TDs for Cam Newton. It's when people are, for me, it's when the experts are down on these guys that these guys rise to the occasion, because I think there is a sense from the coaching staff and the players that something has to shift. If things aren't going right, there's adjustments. So the moment that the experts identify that there's something wrong, usually the coaching staff is a step ahead of them, and they're trying to fix what is wrong. As long as Cam Newton, who's been hurt all season, can keep getting out there and keep playing, this is the dream matchup to have. And finally, Philip Rivers will be a top 3 quarterback this week. Anyone who wonders what kind of quarterback Philip Rivers is, he's an up-and-down guy. But after getting blown out 38-0 against the Dolphins, coming off, just the word, everything bad about Philip Rivers came out.
Yes.
You're going to see everything that's good about Philip Rivers at home against interdivisional rival the Raiders.
All right, interesting. Let's look around some of the skill positions here. Running back coming up here this week. One, of course, that people here in Cleveland probably aren't going to want to hear, but Arian Foster, one of the beasts this season, assuming he's healthy, going against that Browns defense. Browns have been getting healthier against the run here. It's going to be a road environment for them, so Browns crowd will be a part of that as well. What do you expect Arian Foster to do against the Browns this week?
Well, Foster right now, the question is if he plays. The latest word from him is, he's not sure if he's going to play. If he doesn't play, Cleveland has a terrific matchup. Yeah, exactly. Alfred Blue could be a solid fill-in.
Shut up.
I believe that all season. But with Ryan Mallett at quarterback, I am not a Ryan Mallett fan. I'll believe it when I see it. I think that Andre Johnson takes a step back. DeAndre Hopkins takes a step back. I think Bill Belichick got rid of Ryan Mallett for a reason. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is a better quarterback than Ryan Mallett. And if Ryan Fitzpatrick were at QB, I would say start Alfred Blue with abandon. But I don't trust Mallett because I think that if he has trouble throwing the deep ball and Cleveland can start pressing, put 7, 8 in the box, and really force Mallett into these short throws, you're not going to see Blue breaking out for many big gains, and it could be very slow going for that Houston offense.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting when they decide, when we find out which one's going to go, because that really does change the stake of things. If it is Foster, do you expect him to have some success against this Browns defense?
I do, absolutely. They're going to lean on Arian Foster until he breaks down. I think Arian Foster is one of the guys who will be out of football before the age of 30 because of the wear and tear put on him.
I can see that.
But if he plays, he's healthy enough to play, and they throw him out there, you're looking at 25 touches, maybe 30 if you include in the air, and you're going to see Mallett rely on Foster as a check down. When he can't find his receiver, dump it off to Foster for 4 to 8 yards, and you're going to see a lot of those plays. So Foster becomes a must start if he can play, but that's obviously the big issue.
On the flip side, since we're looking at the Browns and the Texans game there, how about West and or Tate or combination, handcuff, however you want to do pair those guys up. But against that defense, you got Tate against his former team. Browns offense got back after a few bad weeks, got back at good running attack, running and blocking last week. Offensive line really gelled. Obviously you do have to worry about J.J. Watt, but that's, other than that, not a lot over there that terrifies you if you're the Browns. Do you think West and Tate are worth a play?
I think West, if anyone. West was, my preseason, he was ranked 47th on my draft board. At the time, of course, Ben Tate was the starter. There was no guarantee West was going to do much of anything this year. And I still believe that Tate was constant injury risk, and I think is slightly overrated compared to the other guys Cleveland has in the backfield, that West would have a chance to produce in the second half of the season. And I think that's happening, and I don't think he's going to relinquish it. Ben Tate has not looked great as a runner the past 3 weeks. He did get a touchdown last week, but his rush, yards per carry is somewhere under 3. Ben Tate was my 37th ranked running back, and that's about as much as I think of Ben Tate. I just don't trust Ben Tate, especially if people are going to try to fight for a playoff spot. You don't want to lean on a guy whose typical output these days is going to be about 10 rushes for 30 yards, and maybe luckily a touchdown, but nothing guaranteed.
Yeah, I hear you. And now he's made itself clear here. He's not happy with the way things have been going so far, and so I hear you there, man. And I don't see West.
Well,
unless...
and my reaction. Sorry to cut you off. My reaction. Somebody doesn't like the way things are going. Play better. And it's unfair for me to say that from the sideline. But I don't like guys who are making millions of dollars who who had a chance to start and didn't stay healthy or didn't put up the numbers that that the coaches wanted to see. It's a total meritocracy in the NFL. Best guy on the field, you play, and that's how it goes. Absolutely.
Another question, running back, Ryan Matthews, does he play this week? I don't know. I know he wasn't practicing in the early part of the week. Do you expect him to play?
I expect him to play. I think San Diego realizes that, undrafted free agent Brandon Oliver is a nice spine, but he's not someone to lean on. Donald Brennan, certainly not. They need Ryan Matthews. And anyone, I've talked to people on Twitter have been telling me they picked up Matthews off waivers. I've been touting Ryan Matthews now for 3 weeks all over the internet. Grab him, trade for him, because when he gets back for the stretch run, last year he was roughly a top 12 running back in fantasy. He could be again down the stretch. There's no reason to think he won't. And he's got a dream matchup. San Diego is going to win this game by at least 25 points, in my opinion, against Oakland. And I think Matthews, as long as he plays, is going to be good for about 80 yards and 2 scores.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Speaking of Matthews, looking at the wide receiver position, Jordan Matthews finally starting to turn into the guy that we talked about early in the season that he could be. Mark Sanchez and him also connected very well there, so no drop-off with the quarterback change in Philly. I know they're going to be at Green Bay here, but I expect that to be a shootout. I don't know how high of a shootout, but I think there's going to be a lot of offense going on there. Jordan Matthews, you like him this week?
Love him. As you know, I mean, I was better last year with my top 10 bold predictions than I have been this year. I missed on Michael Floyd. I missed on, I don't want to go through all my misses, but, I've missed more than I've made up to this point of the season. But Jordan Matthews is a guy, and he was one of my bold predictions. I said he was going to be a top 25 receiver in fantasy this year. It did not look good until Sanchez came in. He and Matthews had great chemistry in the preseason, and that's what attracted me to Matthews. If I had been savvier, I would have realized that Matthews' value was tied more to Sanchez than to Foles. But if I'd been that savvy, I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of having a guy like Matthews on my team because I drafted him fairly high, and now I've got a guy who's a legitimate threat to put up 12-plus fantasy points every week. The chemistry is there. It doesn't mean that Macklin is gone. It doesn't mean that Cooper is gone. It doesn't mean that Sproles won't get his opportunities. And it doesn't mean Philly's going to put up 30 points every week. What it does mean is that Jordan Matthews is now, people should consider him an every week starter. And people who are making the mistake of doing a wait-and-see attitude are going to miss out on buckets of points.
Yeah, I don't have time to wait and see. He's playing, and he's working for me so far, so I got to stick with it. Another guy who's working for me, Martavis Bryant. He's one of those guys, there's always a couple every year that come out of nowhere. Yeah. He didn't play for 5 weeks, and now he is one of the hottest receivers in the league. And this week with Tennessee, I think it's going to be another week where he could definitely be one of the top wide receivers this week.
Absolutely. He salvaged his week last, and then Ben Roethlisberger did too last week with that, minute left, 80-yard touchdown
yes,
pass.
He did.
I had Bryant. Both of my leagues, I was thrilled. I need
Me
points
too.
for the tiebreaker coming up. And, the question is how much longer can he do it? The reality is Martavis Bryant's not going to get 12 touchdowns this season. It doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint. I suggest, obviously, you ride a guy like this while he's hot. He's had 3 or 4 fantastic weeks in a row from a fantasy perspective in terms of what was expected and what he's doing. You got to just throw him out there and see how Pittsburgh's going to use him. Pay attention to his targets. If his targets start to drop off in any way, he's only catching 3 or 4 balls a game. So the concern there is it's kind of like Anton Smith, in Atlanta. There's very high threshold for missing. If he gets, instead of 3 receptions one day, he gets 2 for 50 yards. Well, that's not going to be good enough if he doesn't get a touchdown. So keep an eye on that. And if his role starts to increase, that's where his value is going to stay steady.
All right, how about anybody else you got maybe circled that we didn't talk about there in the wide receiver position before we look at some defenses and get out of here?
Yeah, sure. Wide receiver, because I think Cutler's going to have a huge day. I think Alshon Jeffrey will have a huge day, too. He's kind of a forgotten guy a little bit in fantasy circles. But I'm very, very high on him. I've warned people about Golden Tate. I had a Sports Illustrated article come out a couple of days ago that talked about the risks of Golden Tate now that Calvin Johnson's back. Tate should still put up, number 3 receiver numbers, but he's not going to be a number 1 receiver. That Larry Fitzgerald, he's been dominant the last 3 weeks with Carson Palmer at the helm. With Drew Stanton earlier this season, Larry Fitzgerald was a shell of what he is now. He got about 30% of the production when Drew Stanton was a quarterback than Larry Fitzgerald now. So I encourage people to sell high in Fitzgerald and get a chance on Michael Floyd. And finally, I'll just end it with this, with defenses. Chargers defense all the way. I picked them up in both my leagues. I've got great defenses in both leagues. I'm starting the Chargers this week in both of my leagues. I think they're going to be a top 3 performer. You can put it on Twitter, sing it, top of your lungs. Chargers are going to dominate for a variety of reasons. You can read about later this week. But suffice it to say, anyone who can get them, good for them.
I'll tell you what, speaking of that, I went with the Browns this weekend, and if I win $100,000, I'm just going to thank the Browns. So hopefully Ryan Mallett is a Brandon Whedon-esque debut here in his NFL career. That would be nice. I'd like to see that. But
that's right.
But the Browns do. They got a rookie quarterback and a banged-up running back, and they definitely have the potential, I think, to have a good fantasy game against Houston.
Cool. Yeah, I think you're right. Great talking to you as always, Jay.
BJ, as always, thank you so much. Fantasy Football for Winners on Facebook. They can tweet with you Sunday right up till game time at BJ Rudell. BJ, my man, have a good one, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, take care.
You too. All right, you guys. BJ Rudell, author of Fantasy Football for Winners. He's with us every Thursday right here, 1:30 on the Sports Fix. Sit tight. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Doug Plagens of the Lake Erie Monsters joins us, and so much more still to come here on The Fix.
There's something kind of about a kid that's never played baseball.
Throwing you the best sports commentary in town. The Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Looking to upgrade your league trophy? Check out fantasyjocks.com for championship belts, rings, trophies, and more. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's Fantasy Sports Superstore, fantasyjocks.com.
What's your fantasy?
Let's talk about the X's and O's of family entertainment. Every parent in Ohio knows the importance of being able to draw up an activity that'll get you out of the house for a couple of hours. But it needs to be affordable. It needs to be family-friendly. Above all, it needs to be fun. Now, let's talk about high school sports. Bang for your buck, school sports provide the perfect game plan for your family. You'll enjoy all of the drama and excitement competitive sports offer. You'll be supporting the future leaders of our community in a meaningful way. Best of all, you can take the entire family without breaking the bank. Heck, you won't even dent it. Now, enough chalk talk. Let's get out there and see what's playing at the high school in your community. School sports. Good for our kids, good for our community. This message presented by the Ohio High School Athletic Association and the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
This is Josh Tomlin of the Cleveland Indians, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.